Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're anything like me, you probably like looking at numbers. And if you're into the investing side or the collecting side of Pokemon, there's every chance you enjoy looking at the numbers as well. And that's what this video is all about. We're going to be looking at the numbers on singles for both Sword and Shield era hits and new Scarlet and Violet era hits. Now, I promised these guys I'd do a shout out for a fortnight. And we're into the second week here, so if you haven't grabbed it, download the pocketdex app. Now, the feedback everyone's giving in the comments is really, really valuable to these guys, and I've been passing it on to them, like, making it available for Android, some of the intricacies to do with scanning cards. All that stuff's really important. This app is just getting off the ground, so I said I'd help these guys out and shout them out for a fortnight. So anyway, thanks heaps for the feedback. We know how important that is for people when they're starting out. So I'll be sure to pass that on to them. Hopefully they can make improvements to the app, make it more accessible. It's already a belter of an app, so jump on and grab it. If you haven't seen my other videos the last week, you won't know what I'm talking about. If you have, you do know what I'm talking about. Anyway, into the video. I've done a collaboration with a guy off Instagram called TCG Scientist. Now, he's been pumping out some cool little, I suppose, snapshots of both Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet era cards. So if you haven't seen him, look him up on Instagram. And this is what I'll bring a picture up here, and I'll give you a rundown of exactly what each part of the picture means, and then we'll translate it into some more Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield examples. So like I was saying, if you're into it, if you're into Pokemon card investing, you're probably into the numbers side like me. Like, I'm quite analytical and I love looking at the numbers. So let's bring it up on the screen here. This is obviously the Magikarp from Paldea Evolved, and we'll go through the different sort of components of the picture here. So all these numbers on here, when he talks about pull rate, he's collecting that from an aggregate of sources, whether it be things like TCG player data. Obviously, shout out to the great man himself, Danny Phantom, who does some amazing input into data. So he's sort of aggregating a few different data sources to create this pull rate. And as you can see on the Magikarp, it's 1 in 476 booster packs. So that's how that number works. When we're talking grading difficulty, this is a pretty easy one. So I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence. I'm just explaining what these mean. And then when I show the rest of them, I won't even talk through these sort of numbers. I'll let you read them. But grading difficulty is the ratio of all cards graded versus what receives a 10. Again, pretty simple. In this case, it's 22%. So if 100 cards have been sent off to PSA to get graded, 22 of them have returned as a 10 for Magikarp. So 22%. And that's one thing about this card. Its PSA 10 price is rising because people have found out just how damn hard it is to grade. It's not an easy card to grade at all. 1 in 5 receiving a 10, that's poor for a modern card, because you've got to remember, modern cards, most people are taking them straight from the pack, sleeving them up, even assessing them themselves. Like, if it's got nicks, print lines, way off center, most people are like, what's the point of grading it? It's worth just as much raw almost as a 9. So what's the point of grading? Unless it's perfect, I'm not sending it off. So the fact that this has got 22% ratio returning as a 10 is pretty damn low. The total pop, of course, this is just a culmination of 9s and 10s. And in case you're wondering what the brackets are next to each number, both in PSA 10 population, PSA 9 population, and this total population, it's the increase over the last 7 days. So as we can see, Magikarp's total population is 2,415. Now, the PSA market cap that sits beneath that is the total value of all graded Magikarps. So it's sitting at $433,334. And if we look through those bottom numbers at the bottom of the photo, we can see it's ungraded price, at $70.25. Its PSA 9 price at $84.41. And its PSA 10 price at $535. And there's currently only 542 PSA 10 Magikarps. That's actually quite, I know it's high compared to a lot of course, vintage cards, but it's quite low for a modern chase card. This is the #1 chase card from Paldea Evolved. Then the really important, or some other important figures, grade profit to PSA. What this does, it takes into consideration a $30 grading cost. And as you can see, the grade profit from an ungraded price of $70.25 through to a PSA 10 of $535 is a 434% gain. That's a pretty massive gain. I can't believe how hard this card is to grade. And you'll see that what I was saying before with the reflection between ungraded price to a PSA 9 price. If you take in that $30 grading cost, or maybe you're sending bulk and in snail mail and it's a little bit less than that. But even if you happen to get a 9, with grading costs taken into consideration, it's not worth it, is it? Like, you're not making any money other than to have a verified copy that's a 9. Anyway, like I said, let's move on to some more. And I won't insult anyone's intelligence by reading out these numbers. I'll let you read them on the screen. I just wanted to give some commentary around some of these cards. So we're going to have some Sword and Shield cards. We're going to start off with that. And then I'm going to get into a couple of Scarlet and Violet cards. So these are the most popular cards. Let's have a look at Fusion Strike's Gengar. I won't read out all of it, but some of it I'll point out is important. Pull rate 1 in 1,143. If we compare this to the Magikarp from Paldea Evolved, which is 1 in 476, the pull rates were harder, weren't they? Like, that's something that clearly stands out. And if pull rates are hard, typically we're going to get a higher ungraded price. And that's, again, reflected in yes, the Gengar's a more popular Pokemon than Magikarp, and the card's nicer than Magikarp, or is it? But what I'm getting at is the ungraded raw price for a Gengar is going to sit a lot higher than what it will for the Magikarp, or even like a Charizard from Obsidian Flames, because it's a lot easier card to pull. Here's another big discrepancy between the Magikarp and the Gengar. 62% 10s. Same thing. They're probably most likely going straight from packs, straight into sleeves. They're most likely being assessed and going, yep, okay, centering's looking pretty solid, can't see any nicks, hardly any whitening, or little to no whitening at all. I think I'm going to send this off to grading, because it's likely going to get a 9, and fingers crossed it gets a 10. So 62% get a 10. Why have we had such a massive difference between card quality and printing quality from Sword and Shield to Scarlet and Violet? It's not every set, though, because some sets in Scarlet and Violet, the ratio of total graded cards to PSA 10s is quite strong, and others is just abysmal. Like Obsidian Flames is awful. So, profit from a raw to a PSA 10 is 121%. And again, that's a direct correlation between the amount of percentages that are getting a 10 when you send them in compared to that Magikarp. So, next one up. One of the big hitters, the big Rayquaza. This is one of my favourite cards from the Sword and Shield era. Pull rate, astronomical, 1 in 1,734. But 74% of graded copies receive a 10. And just so you know, there's now over 7,000 PSA 10 copies of this Rayquaza VMAX. These are just almost unheard of numbers, aren't they? Like, in comparison to what we know from the past, if you grew up in my era collecting Wizards of the Coast era cards, or even EX era cards like Gold Stars, etc., or even moving into Heart Gold, Soul Silver, or Diamond and Pearl, etc., like, the PSA 10 chase cards have incredibly low populations compared to what they have now. Yet, because there's such demand for these cards, prices are still holding so strong. I don't think we're ever going to see, though, with this amount of PSA 10 pop, we're not going to see the $5,000 PSA 10 anymore, or the 10,000, the 8,000, the 7. Like, we're not probably going to see that number from a modern chase card anymore, just because so many get graded. But kudos to the cards and how strong they are. Like, to hold the prices that they're holding based on the PSA 10 pops. But all it is it's just supply demand, isn't it? I mean, there'd certainly be more than 7,000 collectors in the world that damn well want this card in their collection. So that's why they hold such a strong price. And the big one up next, the Umbreon. This is, like everyone's been saying, it's the modern day base set Charizard, isn't it? It is the chase card of the last 3 years, isn't it? The Moonbreon, as everyone calls it. Pull rate, the same as Rayquaza, which is 1 in 1,734. 75% achieving a 10. There's now over 10,000 PSA 10 copies. And here's a fun little fact with this card. And a few people have been talking about this, because what we don't know is total print numbers. Like, Pokemon never let us know that. The Pokemon Company International keep that under lock and key, so we don't know. But even if we work off from this picture the total number of 9 and 10s, which is only I shouldn't say only, it's still a fair few, but it's 14,281 PSA 9 and 10. So this isn't taking into consideration 8s, 7s and below, or raw copies. This is just graded 9 and 10 with PSA. This isn't taking into account Beckett or CDC or other grading companies. If we multiply that by the pull rate, which is how many packs you'd need to open to get this, We go 14,281 times 1,734. This is pull rate from packs. You need to open 1,734 packs to get this card. We get 24,763,254 packs. That's not even taking into consideration, like I said, raw copies, PSA 8 or below, any Beckett graded cards, any CGC graded cards. Man, there must be some Pokemon packs around, hey? And so much of it must have been opened. Like, for people to think this is just still chilling inside everyone's cupboards with, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of booster boxes left, I can tell you now, that's why Evolving Skies has jumped up so much. Obviously, it's a fun set to open. There's some major chase cards to chase. But if people are thinking that it's just everywhere, it's not everywhere anymore. It's just not. So fun little fact there with the Moonbryon. Next one, Lugia from Sword and Shield. Last Sword and Shield one. Actually, no, I'll do Giratina as well because I really like Giratina. Lugia, pull rate, 1 in 667, so a lot better than the Evolving Skies pull rate. 60% get a 10. And like a lot of these cards, PSA pricing is up. PSA 10 price up 11%. So we're finally starting to see, we've seen this curve. I'm not going to bring the graph up, but TCG Player was seeing obviously height when a card gets released or a set gets released. Then obviously as supply gets open and more come onto the market, we see a dip down. Then we get this sort of bottom out period. And all of a sudden, I feel like we're at the end of the bottom out period for a lot of Sword and Shield cards, and they're starting to uptick a little bit. Sun and Moon cards did the exact same thing. And final Sword and Shield one I wanted to show is the Giratina. 1 in 804 packs, 3,967 PSA 10 copies. And again, that correlation between the harder it is to grade equals the higher gain from raw to PSA 10. And we can see that in reflection on Giratina, but 3,967, that's relatively low in comparison to Rayquaza, Umbreon, etc. And they have heaps harder pull rates. So people that were thinking like Evo Skies was short print, no, it wasn't. It was not short printed at all. That's not the reason the box price has gone to the moon, Brion. That's a terrible joke. That's not the reason it's gone to the moon. The reason is just demand for it. There was so much supply of Evolving Skies, but the demand for it was just bonkers. So Lost Origin, keep an eye on that set. I just wanted to go through 2 more Scarlet and Violet. I know we had Magikarp at the start. The Charizard English example from 151. 1 in 227. It's a bit hard. Have we got the full data for 151 yet? Does that sound right? I'm not 100% sure, but that's what we've got to go off. 37% get a 10. Okay, there's a huge amount of PSA 9s, which in correlation leaves the raw price of a Charizard English 151, the special illustration rare, so close to a PSA 9. So unless you're certain that your Charizard that you pull from 151 is going to receive a 10, you're probably almost wasting your money sending it off and getting graded. You're not going to get much of a gain if it receives a 9, not much at all. And the final one I wanted to show, which obviously there's not a heap of data on this because it is the newest set that's out, is the Iron Crown EX. It's seen an uptick in price. People are screaming buyouts and everything else, but 1 in 833. So we're finally back with pull rates being more difficult. This is on par with the Giratina from Lost Origin. 86% they'll have received a 10. And again, the numbers are too small at the moment because there's only 6 PSA 10 copies. So I reckon if I'm a betting man, I would bet this proportion of PSA 10s will drop. It's not going to remain at 86% get a 10. That's like Japanese print quality, which English is not there. We know that. So this could drop to 40% getting a 10 or 30% getting a 10, or might stay high at 50 or 60% getting a 10 like a lot of the Sword and Shield sets. At the moment though, the other thing that's going to drop is the PSA 10 price at $638. And one big thing to note though with this is look at the profit you could make, 373%, including the grading fee from raw price to PSA 10 right now. If you can be somewhat lucky about it or clever about it, I'm not really sure what the right word to use is there, clever or lucky, but it is one way you can make short-term money off the Pokemon sort of TCG. If you can get in early, buy really nice copies of modern chase cards, get them graded quickly and returned to you and sell them off as a 10, you can make some really, really good money there. I'm not suggesting that as a play. I'm just saying you might get lucky and do that, or it could be a game plan of yours, but it is a possibility to make. This is more an investing sub. That's probably more a quick money-making scheme than an investment sort of thing. So anyway, hopefully, like I was saying, that if you're into the Pokemon investing side of it, you really enjoy looking at the numbers, and this has been insightful. Again, TCG Scientist on Instagram, look him up. He's done a fantastic job. It takes time and effort to do these. Obviously, correlate all the data, put it into a nice photo, and make it look as good as it does. So go follow him on Instagram. Hopefully you can get some, is it followers on Instagram, is that? I don't really go on there that much, but hopefully you can get some more followers or subscribers, whatever it is. I'm Michael. This is Poke Oz. Catch everyone next time.